Hey guys, this is STLYoungblood on the line with Drink the Koolaid. Say hello, Koolaid.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Today we're going to be starting off our Duality series, where we're actually going to be talking about current things that are going on in the Planetside 2 world, and that's going to be updates or just random things in the game that seem relevant or that you guys want to hear us talk about. The first thing that we're going to actually start the series with seemed kind of relevant, being the Ask Me Anything that the PS2 developers did on Reddit. We kind of picked out some certain topics that we thought were interesting that we wanted to talk about, and we'll just kind of go from there. Future episodes, you'll probably see other content creators from Planetside 2, other players that'll kind of be featured in some of these videos. So anything to add to that before we get started?
Not really. You pretty much covered it. I'm just glad that we're finally getting around to doing this. This is something we've had in the works for about 2 months now, and I'm glad it's finally coming to fruition. So I'm looking forward to it.
We are a couple slackers.
That's definitely true.
All right. So the first one, the first topic that I wanted to bring up was actually something that wasn't even answered by the developers, but I thought was at least an interesting topic. And that's the question was, is the resource revamp still planning on including harvesting of some kind of vehicle? Basically, what this person wanted to know was if there's going to be kind of like the ant from Planetside 1 that goes out and collects either Araxium. And he kind of envisioned this world where we have like search and destroy missions going out to either kind of rescue your resource collectors, or maybe you're going to ambush the enemies, and then you can collect their resources. So I guess just from a gameplay perspective, what do you think about adding something like that?
I think if they did, I mean, have they said much what's actually going to happen with the resource revamp, or if they are going to add anything like this at all?
They haven't talked specifically about what's happening with the resource revamp. I know in one of their roadmaps, I think they mentioned the something along the lines of the ant coming back, and it's probably not the roadmap because I think that's more official, but I think it was in like their long-term plans.
I know, I never played Planetside 1. I think if they add something, some sort of resource harvesting, they need to make it fun, something like this person suggested, where it's actually going to keep players of first-person shooters entertained. It's not going to be something that's boring and, mind-numbing.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Just kind of that, I think it adds a little bit of that real-time strategy element to it, which might be kind of fun. And then, just kind of having a way to stick it to your enemy a little bit more is kind of an interesting dynamic in my mind, too.
Yeah, I think if they could implement it into being like really key for alerts and stuff like that, it could be a really cool extra feature that obviously isn't in the game so far.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that this could also kind of help with is that, there's not really a real negative side to being cut off. I mean, you're not losing resources. The base doesn't just time out on its own. Part of the purpose of, the ants in Planetside 1, and I didn't play it either, so I'm going off of all the information that I've heard about it. It was basically just to keep the base, energized and alive so you can continue to spawn there. And this kind of might solve two problems. It might add that interesting dynamic to the game, but also allow you to, actually have a real negative side to being cut off.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it kind of adds, or kind of goes from that whole lack of metagame that's going on right now, and this is just something that could add to that if they finally get around to putting in more of a metagame.
Totally agree. All right, well, one of the next questions that I thought was kind of interesting, and at least the answer was, new base designs are always welcome, but walls everywhere is really frustrating for attackers and defenders. Any change is coming. And the response that the design team gave was that there's a big difference between wall and blockade. And they're definitely aren't using walls like they did on Esamir, where they completely isolated everything from both sides of it. But they're still using walls as both a blockade, where we don't want something to be able to go through, and as a foundation to place things on top of it. I don't know about you, but that almost feels like a dodged question. I don't think it really answers anything. They're saying that there's blockades and then there's structural walls. I don't know what that really means to answer the question.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what they're getting at there, but I know exactly what the guy means is asking the question. For the new base designs, that's the first thing you notice is the giant walls everywhere, and it's kind of neat once in a while, but it does get old real quick.
Yeah, it almost feels like the walls that went up were just kind of a quick response to complaints about like farming and camping the spawn rooms. It probably wasn't really the best option. Now, like the teleporters that they put up in the spawn rooms to get you over to another location, I think that was a pretty nice change, especially since it seems like not everybody knows where all those teleporters end up going.
Yeah,
So it just kind of spreads out your your troops a little bit, so not all the firepower is in one area.
yeah, definitely. I think actually it could add more teleporters to some of the bases if they wanted, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think a couple more teleporters would be good. I don't really have a great answer to this one as far as like what would fix the problem outside of the fact that just from like a pure gameplay or I guess a gameplay perspective, if you're spawning at a place that's so pinned down you can't get out of the spawn room, you're losing that base anyway. So you should probably just move on to another location. It doesn't really make sense to me for you to be able to sneak out, no problem solved, when the other teams work so hard to get in to actually capture that territory to hold you back. If you were going to do anything, you'd probably need to go and pull vehicles from another location anyways to come up and deal with the problem.
Yeah, I think the walls are fine on a few bases, but not on as many as there currently are, or as there going to be. So I think if they keep it limited to, just like the stronghold and a few other random bases, I think it would be fine. But not going overboard would be the best idea.
Yeah, and I think where it's kind of prevalent is like on like amp stations now, and with even underneath like tech plants, the additional walls that have been thrown in are just so they almost just feel out of place. Places like you mentioned, like the Stronghold and the Octagon, and other places like that. I think it makes sense because it almost just plays into what the base is actually supposed to be. But just throwing up random walls everywhere doesn't really seem like it's a fix to any problem in my mind.
Yeah, I think you pretty much got it covered. I mean,
The way the walls are currently set up and laid out, you almost feel like you're at a disadvantage if you're playing anything but Light Assault.
definitely. That's basically all I ever play at those bases like Stronghold or Octagon, etc.
All right, so the next question that came up was, will there be any changes made to Zoe Maxes, specifically their movement speed? And the response that the dev team gave was that ZOE will be getting rebalanced in the next game update, currently scheduled for mid-December. We'll be receiving movement tweaks and an ability timer that prevents it from being used all the time and prevents instant on and off. You feel like that's a warranted change?
I definitely think something needs to be done. I had a lot of questions on my channel about Zoe Maxes, so I finally went out and invested some certs and some money into them. Well, I bought one blue shift. I didn't actually buy the second weapon. But, after playing them a little bit, you can tell something needs to be done. And the thing that popped in my head right away was that they have both the damage buff and the movement speed buff, so they're kind of getting two things at once. But at the same time, I didn't feel like you could just run out and solo the world as a Zoe Max. You still needed repairs. You still took a ton of damage, or extra damage, obviously. But I do think something needs to be tweaked a little bit.
And I'm glad that you've actually played it, because I'm just on the other side. I've never played with the Zoe Max, so for me, it's just I'm on the receiving end of Zoe Maxes, unless I'm playing my VS character, and then I'm just fighting next to them. But to me, there's just it just feels like whenever I see Zoe Maxes and it's a one-on-one situation, I just almost stand still and let them just take me out, because I mean they're going to catch you. They're fast. They do a ton of damage. I mean I know a Max should be an intimidating figure, but especially when you compare that ability to what the other factions have, it just feels out of place and just not balanced, and something probably needs to happen. And I think, talking about an ability timer, I think I like that idea as a balance, because those you can put on Zoe and just run it nonstop, and it's kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, that's actually what surprised me, because when I started playing Zoe, I actually didn't know a lot about it other than they got a damage increase but took extra damage, and I always thought there was a timer. So I'm constantly, when I first started playing, I just by nature kept trying to turn it off all the time so it didn't run out of charge, even though there was really no reason to turn it off other than if you're taking that extra damage. So I think the ability timer will be the #1 thing. I hope they don't go too overboard. Like, I hope they don't nerf the movement speed, add a timer, and give it a long on-off time. I don't think they need to do all three, but something definitely needs to be done.
What would you think about just maybe adding an ability timer, and nothing extreme like you were saying, but also maybe increasing the amount of damage you take while it's activated. So there's a little bit more negative to it. Because right now it feels like people don't even care that they're taking more damage. They know that they can take out whatever target they're engaging first, so there's not any thought that goes into it.
I think that would work, but they might have to change around the actual ranks of Zoe. Maybe they could just lower them a little bit, because right now, I only have the first rank of Zoe, and by increasing, ranks of Zoe, you take less damage by turning it on, and only having the first rank, I really didn't even notice that big of a difference. So, yeah, maybe that is something that could be tweaked. I think that would be a good idea. The movement speed is just really what feels out of place to me. You get the extra damage and you get the movement speed. So, I don't know. Something definitely needs to be done. There's a lot of different ways they could go about it, but I hope, honestly, that they don't do all three. I think that would be a little extreme.
All right, makes sense to me. And I guess as a closing question on this max topic, what would you give in order to have a mid-range weapon for an NC max?
I actually think shotgun with slugs are pretty decent at mid-range, but a lot of people don't feel the same way. They could maybe, tighten up the cone a little bit, but honestly, I don't think they're as bad as people make them out to be.
Yeah, I kind of agree, and I think a lot of people just see the slugs and they're so used to saying, "Oh, slugs are a terrible option," or at least hearing that. But for me, I've had some success with it. I think what really allows you to kind of stand a chance against the other maxes is the fact that you can reload your shotguns while you've got your Aegis shield up.
Definitely, and I think that's right there is what actually makes the shield worthwhile. The shield by itself is kind of meh. I'd rather almost have the charge ability, except for the fact that you can reload while having your shield up.
Yep, totally agree. All right, so the next question to talk about, what future changes can we expect from to the deployment system following the squad deploy change in PU01? There's a couple of changes incoming from the dev team, specifically about deployment systems. One was that the players log into the game to the deployment screen instead of just dropping right in the warp gate. The players can change continents from the deployment screen without having to go back to the warp gate. Instant action drop pods will have more predictable landing zones, so you'll land on the inside of the base if you're defensive, or you'll drop on the outside of the base, and I like this note, and hopefully not down at the bottom of some shitty cliff. I don't know which dev said that, but I like that, for offensive drop-ins. And we're debating adding the ability for players to spawn in squad-owned vehicles, possibly just transport vehicles, possibly all crewed vehicles, while they're being driven. What do you think about those changes, and do you think it's kind of enough to counteract some of what's already happened, or where do you think about where it stands?
I do like those changes. I was pretty devastated when the squad deploy got changed. I've how often I squad deploy and take out Sunders, and I think that's exactly why they changed it. And the more I think about it, the more I agree with them. It was too easy to take out Sunders. They didn't change anti-tank mines, which I'm glad about, so I guess this is kind of the compromise. As far as those changes that they're going to be implementing, the one that I really like is that players will be able to change continents from the deployment screen. I think that's really going to help big outfits when you have to move an entire group of players, which we do very often.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that's one of those ones that kind of made me smile when I saw it. I also kind of like the idea of adding or allowing people to spawn into vehicles. Now, it says transport vehicles, and that's kind of what I've envisioned before was, I'm flying a Galaxy. I'm tired of waiting for people to get back to the warp gate just to get into my Galaxy. Why don't you just spawn on it while I'm trying to get you guys to the place that we're trying to take you? I think that would be really cool. I'm not sure it's really needed for a Sunderer, considering you can just park and deploy the Sundy. But, then again, you only have access to so many spawns around the area anyways, so I like that idea in theory, but especially for Galaxies.
Yeah, definitely for Galaxies, but you mentioned Sunders, but how many times have you been dead and you see two Sunders pulling up to a base and you're just sitting there waiting for them to deploy, and you're sitting there at a deploy screen for 2 minutes. Finally they deploy. It would be nice to just be able to spawn there, hop out, and take care of business.
Yeah, that's true. I wonder if there would need to be some sort of threshold, kind of like there's the no deploy zone around bases right now with Sunderers, if something along those same lines would happen, because you'd see that kind of being something that you could just kind of bypass that, at least for your squad.
Yes, something would have to there'd have to be some kind of no deploy zone or something similar to what there is now, because you couldn't just drive a moving Sunder around and drop people off at will, I wouldn't think.
It seems it seems like that'd be even better than just deploying one right there.
Yeah, exactly, and I don't think that's what they want out of this.
Probably not. I personally, I'm with you. I was sad to see the squad deploy go, just the ability to drop out onto your squad leader. I wonder if there's a way they could bring that back with some thresholds on how close you could be to a base before that kind of deactivates itself. That seems like it's probably a computing nightmare, but like, let's say you've got a squad leader that's, 300-400 meters from a base, but there's no other spawn points. Maybe you could still be able to just deploy right on top of them.
Yeah, it would be nice to put something in like that. It sucks when your leader or your group is at a base fighting and you try to spawn and you're back at the previous base, and you basically are forced to pick up a vehicle and drive it there. And it's just an annoyance right now on certain deploys. Anyway.
Yeah, maybe we'll just add that to our wish list. All right, now one of my favorite questions that we got on the AMA was, are there any weapons or mechanics you regret making or adding to the game? And Higby's response was, well, hindsight being 2020, the biggest regret I have in this regard is about not having better lock-on mechanics. Lock-on weapons don't reward skill in any way and have no gameplay on either end of the equation, attacking or defending against, and that's boring. How do you feel about that?
When I actually read this question, before I even finished the question, the one thing that popped in my mind was the can I think of the damn lock-on launch? Yes, the Striker.
Okay.
It was the one thing that popped in my mind instantly, and I thought whoever was in charge of designing the Striker had to be thinking a couple months later, man, I really fucked up on that one.
Yeah, I've created a monster.
But I totally agree here that I've said this many times in my videos that I don't think lock-on launchers are a very good thing to have in games. They just absolutely take no skill to use, and even when you're flying, they take no skill to break, but they just force you to, kind of leave the fight, which is not very fun for either side.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think everybody knows that. I'm not a lock-on fan as well. I think they're boring. I think they're skillless. I think it kind of has a really negative impact on gameplay. Honestly, I kind of wish we saw more weapons like the Phoenix and the Lancer, instead. The Lancer's pretty damn good at shooting air. I mean, it doesn't do probably enough damage for, if you wanted it to take on a role like that. But what I do actually like is what happened with the Striker. And I think that is something that could be maybe a new mechanic that's used for all lock-ons. You need to maintain your lock in order for your missile to actually hit. It's not using a whole lot of skill, but it's not just fire, forget, and watch and laugh as your enemy goes fleeing off into the distance.
Yeah, definitely. I actually liked, if you remember back in Bad Company 2, they kind of had like a duel system where you had to hit a vehicle with a tracer round, something that was a little harder to use than just a lock-on launcher, and then you could use your lock-on launcher, something like that, or even like a portable, flak launcher or something. I don't have the answer to this, and there has to be some way to balance out air. That's why you can't just take lock-on launchers out of the game. But I've never been a fan of lock-on launcher mechanic.
I agree, and kind of going along the the battlefield theme, even maybe having something where a couple classes have the ability, or hell, for all I care, every class but a heavy has the ability to pull out a laser designator and target, so everybody, the heavies could then launch, lock-on launchers. I think something like that might be okay, and it would encourage that teamwork and meta role.
Yeah, they completely just copy Battlefield and give the recons or infiltrators something like that, which a lot of people think infiltrators are lacking that team mechanic anyway. So that could be a big part of their suit.
Yeah, well, and especially if you're rewarding, just every time you target something, or especially if you're getting hits or kills, and there's enough reward on that as far as certs, I think you're going to see that would be something that would be used. I don't think people would overlook that at all.
Definitely. I mean, people do it. I keep referring to Battlefield, but people do it in Battlefield for entire matches, and there's very little reward for doing it in Battlefield as opposed to what there would be in Planetside 2.
Yep, for sure. And then on the flip side of the argument, or this question was, what do you want added to the game that you think would be sweet? And Higby's response was, my list is too long, but I'll cut to the chase and say flamethrowers. Did you run into many flamethrowers in beta?
I played beta for about an hour, so no, I did not. But it would have been nice to see, that's for sure.
They were interesting, and I never got one, so it was normally just me being on the receiving end of it. But I think flamethrowers coming back would be cool. I'm sure it would be just another short range option for the NC Max, so we would probably want something different, like I don't know, like a napalm launcher or something. But I think it would at least be cool for, especially for the the VS and the TR Maxes, to have something a little bit more close range like that.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know what the whole purpose would be for a NC Max. I'm gonna guess if they put it on all factions, it's not gonna be amazing. It might be, within 10 meters, but then what's the point of having something like the hacksaws over a flamethrower? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's probably going to be more of a novelty than anything.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you there.
One of the posts that Higby and his team put in the most effort on in this AMA was about esports. And one of the things he said was, I still see people every day listing esports as one of the things that we're doing instead of improving the game. And he wanted to set the record straight and said that to date they've spent 0 man-hours on esports, which I thought was interesting, especially when we see, MLG Planetside stuff going on, and then we see the Nexus Battle Island coming out. And he addressed the Nexus a little bit by saying that it was going to be, a playable continent in-game, so it's not really esports specific. And I thought, well, that's okay, I guess. We all want more places and new places to fight, so I think that's probably a positive right there. But he went on to kind of address some of the challenges of esports. And, he said that, esports doesn't come from a company just saying this game's going to do esports now. Now all of a sudden we're in competitive gaming. It really needs to come from the community. And I don't know about you, but I haven't really seen a ton of interest from anybody in the community saying we need competitive or Planetside.
I don't think there's a single person in our outfit that has mentioned wanting esports, and nobody that really comments on my channel is really concerned about esports. I know, it's Murda. I think he's big in the esports and he's big in the competition side of things. But honestly, when I think of Planetside 2, esports is the last thing that pops into my head.
Yeah, and I think the game itself is just fundamentally challenged based on the size and the theory or the theme of never-ending war. There's not matches, there's no winners, there's no losers. It just goes and goes and goes. And yeah, you can win an alert, but I mean, it just doesn't seem like the scale and the style of this game even caters to that at all, even on a smaller scale like a Nexus Island.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't checked out Nexus Island too much. I'm actually looking forward to it. But of every first-person shooter I've played, I think Planetside 2 is the least esporty one I've ever played, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't see how you could make it work. One of the things that I've heard before is that one of the things that makes esports successful is that people are bought in. They're fans of certain players, and I think that's why games like StarCraft are so successful, because people like these players like they're athletes, and they almost feel like that connection, and they follow them and all around. But let's take our crew for example. Even if we're just running a full platoon, there's 48 people. How hard is it going to be to follow just your favorite player? And two, how often are you rooting for one player when the other 47 people are competing for the same goal? I think it's hard for the people to get that buy-in, and I think that's one of the things that's going to struggle here.
Yeah, I mean, I just think overall, I don't really care about the esports side of it much, and I honestly haven't thought about it too much, so I don't have a ton of input on this, but I'm not against it if there is that siding. It's just, I don't see exactly how it's going to work with Planetside 2.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm probably not the best person to be talking about this subject either, because esports to me is one of those things that just hasn't really ever clicked, and it's never really made sense for me. I've watched a couple of the MLG broadcasts, and I thought they were interesting, but I think that novelty always wears off for me pretty quick.
this would be a good topic to bring back up if we could get, and I'm sure we could, it's Murder on here. I know he is a big competitive player, or at least used to be, and I think he would have some good input on this. But I honestly have never watched maybe more than 5 minutes of competitive gameplay. I've just never been into it. I don't have any problems with it, but it's not something that I've really gotten into before.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, I think whether you guys just want to leave some notes in the comment section, or if you have some people that you want us to kind of talk to or about, I think that would be good, because clearly neither one of us are big esports guys, but it seems like it's kind of a touchy subject for the community. All right, one of the other ones that we're going to talk about, somebody wanted to know if there's any information about balance changes planned based on the data gained from the past few months. All the data that they've gathered showed that the NC are underperforming on more or less every server, and they wanted to know if we're going to get some loving. They basically replied by saying that there's a lot of balance updates coming in the next couple of weeks. Most of them are empire agnostic, so that means that it's not going to impact one specific empire. It's for everybody. There is going to be some empire specific adjustments too.
That is a big word. I'm glad you explained that for me.
Hey, I do what I can.
Sorry, I cut you off.
That's fine. I'm trying to read. I'm all distracted. Okay, so there's some areas for each empire where they have weaknesses. In a lot of cases, this is okay, and it helps add to the asymmetrical balance that we're striving for, which I personally really like. It gets bland if we're all just different colors, but the exact same, units essentially. One of the interesting things that makes it extra challenging is that among top players, a lot of those balance issues are significantly lessened. So by buffing for the masses, we'd be over-buffing some of the best NC players. It's a difficult puzzle, but one that we'll continue to address over time. What the hell do you think that means?
I don't really understand that. So you have a really good player that isn't on an equal playing field, but he's better just skill-wise, so you don't want to put him on an equal playing field because he'll be that much better? I don't understand that at all, honestly.
I don't get it either, because to me that sounds like, okay, if you're saying, and let's just use the example, let's say NC weapons are more challenging because they have more recoil and a larger spread, and maybe slower rate of fire. So if you've got like the best heavy assault player in the NC, and then you put him in the TR, is he then? Are they saying that he then wouldn't be like tremendously better in this TR? I don't get what they're saying here.
Yeah, I don't quite understand it either. And honestly, I was a bit surprised to see that NC is underperforming. I wouldn't trade NC weapons for any other weapons as a whole. I just like that we have a bigger variety, I think, than the other factions.
Yeah, and I kind of like the theme to NC, and I mean we both play multiple factions, but so I think we've kind of had enough experience with all these to know. But I think I like the theme of heavy hitting weapons. I don't need the high rate of fire. I prefer starting out with a bolt action on the or the infiltrator class. I think there's probably some areas, and I wonder if they're getting into like vehicle issues as well here.
Well, yeah, I mean, the vehicle side of things I haven't really thought about as much, but, you said we have the harder weapons, and, this is exactly what I just said. We have a bigger variety. We do have them harder hitting weapons, but we also have high rate of fire weapons. We just don't have as many options in the high rate of fire department, but we still have, one for almost every class, and that's what I really like about the NC weapons, actually.
Yeah, I could get on board with that. Yeah, I'm wondering, I think they almost have to be including things in here like, probably it's got to be vehicle related of some sort, because it doesn't really make sense from just like an infantry gameplay, at least in my mind. So if any of you guys out there like have any insight on this or what the hell they're talking about, you can tell we're both kind of scratching our heads on this. So I mean,
well, I could tell you that the Enforcer shotgun is a pile of shit. And I think everybody pretty much knows that. And if they're including that into this, that's probably what's dragging our whole faction down. Just people running out there with that gun, not knowing what to do with it. So,
well, and since the best NC Enforcer shotgun user is sitting right by the door of a spawn room, by buffing that weapon, he would then be tremendously overpowered.
I guess so. I don't know.
All right, so yeah, leave some comments or let us know what you guys think about this one, because it left us both pretty confused. All right, and the last question I wanted to kind of wrap up things up with today was, do you have any plans on giving light assaults a tool? We are currently still the only class without a tool. while the infiltrator is being looked at for having the drones. I guess before I give the Higby's answer on this one, why don't we go ahead and just break that down? What do you think about Light Assault not currently having a specific tool for their role?
I think it sucked, but I also think Light Assault might be the funnest class in the game. I don't have any real ideas for what to give them as a tool. One thing I think would be pretty cool, and this is a little bit different than actually giving them a tool, is to allow them to have access to both C4 and med packs at the same time. Might be a little overpowered, but it would be so awesome.
Maybe just kind of give them the ability to steal one of the other class's abilities for a little bit.
Yeah, just give them a heavy shield and invisibility and recon darts, and Light Assault would be perfect.
Well, I think that is actually perfect leeway into our response from the design team, and that's each class update we plan on adding new abilities, weapons, and in some case tools for the class. Our current plan for the next Light Assault update is to add the ability to wield akimbo weapons, but we're still working out a lot of details on that. For those of you that don't know that, akimbo means holding one of your main weapons in both hands. So you would have 2 SMGs, 2 shotguns, 2 whatever. So,
otherwise known as dual wielding.
Yes, dual wielding. Basically Rambo mode. So, I mean, what do you think about giving these guys akimbo?
It sounds awful. It really does, but it sounds like so much fun as well. I know as soon as people read this, I actually haven't read through and read any comments on this, but I would go ahead and say there's going to be a whole bunch of "this is not Call of Duty," blah blah blah.
Yeah, where's my attack dogs?
Yeah, exactly. But honestly, I think it sounds like fun. I don't know how they're going to balance it, what guns you're going to be able to use. I mean, if I can use 2 GD7Fs, it's going to be a massacre. But
well, and I think that's exactly it. The weapons that the Light Assault has access to are some of the best weapons in the game for that type of role. So you're talking about giving, maybe 2 shotguns. You're using 2 like uppercuts, or maybe you're using, God forbid, 2 blitzes. Can you imagine that? Or like the Sirius for VS, or like you said, the GD7F. I mean, there's some of the best weapons in the game in my mind. Can you imagine them running around with 2 of them while flying over your head?
Yeah, my guess is they're going to have to open up the spread significantly to make them balanced, and you're probably going to, even if you're using 2 carbines, which I don't know if you're going to be able to do, it's probably going to be limited to SMGs. But say you're using 2 SMGs. SMGs have a short enough range as it is. I'm guessing the range is going to be even cut in half from what it is currently.
I almost envision these little Light Assaults running akimbo SMGs as kind of like little mini-maxes running around.
Yeah, pretty much. With jetpacks, it sounds like a complete blast, but I don't know. It's going to have some serious balancing issues, and I'm sure that's kind of what they're working on right now.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, I've read a couple places was, the Light Assault has a tool, and the tool is their jetpacks, or the tool is their C4. And, now, granted, those are things that would be considered an option or an ability. It's not essentially a tool. So the question is theoretically right that there's an option available for a tool to be added. I just, like you said, it's one of the most fun classes, and I think I've probably had some of my most successful runs as a Light Assault.
Do you know what I just thought of?
What's that?
Dual crossbows.
There you go.
That would be the best thing ever. Because they are working on crossbows as well, so that would be totally Call of Duty.
I did not hear that they were working on crossbows.
Maybe I made that up, but I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere.
Well, why not? In the NC, we'll probably get a railgun crossbow.
Perfect.
Which would actually be pretty awesome. Actually,
totally.
You know what? I guess before we close this out, you mentioned getting a health pack. You know what might even be better and maybe not as OP would be if they could carry ammo packs. Just because
something. I mean, there's a lot of things they could do there, or even give. Since Light Assaults are used so much for spawn beacon placers, maybe give them like a little mini spawn beacon or something along those lines. You could do a lot of different things with it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. All right, guys. So that pretty much wraps up our first episode of Duality, covering the AMA on Reddit. We're going to kind of have this be an ongoing series. It's not something that you're going to see come out, like every other day. It's kind of hard to get our schedules together. So I would say you could probably pretty safely expect to see one of these every couple weeks or so. If there's people that you want to see us talk with, we'll reach out to them and see if they want to get in on some of these discussions. If you have anything to add to some of these, to some of these comments or that we've talked about, put them in the comments of the video itself, and give us some ideas of things to talk about going forward. It's essentially an open forum for us to discuss whatever you want to hear about. So, Koolaid, anything to add to that?
You pretty much covered it, but were we thinking about adding a user question at the end of every episode?
Yes.
And it wouldn't be like my mailbag where I pretty much answer everything. I think we're just going to pick one really good question and kind of cover it.
Yep. I think that's what we decided.
All right. That's pretty much all I have then. I'm looking forward to making more of these.
Yeah, it was a good time. So, guys, thanks for watching. There's going to be a link in the outro to both of our channels. So if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe for more and stay tuned. So thanks for watching and take care.
See you later.